The Bitcoin treasury companies are all the rage, and they're really unique because if you're
Adam SPAC, he has to change his name now. It's not about the backpack anymore. It's about the SPAC.
That's right. But Lynn Alden wrote a great article recently sort of explaining the treasury company phenomenon and saying, well, it kind of makes sense because if you're a listed company, you have access to much more attractive financing than you or me. You've got a business. You can borrow against your business.
Yep.
Maybe you've got a house in New York City real estate. You can borrow against that. You've got a job. You can borrow against that. But if you're Adam SPAC or Strategy, I mean, Strategy can issue preferreds with at-the-market shelves, billions of dollars. That's incredible optionality. But if there are any carpenters in the crowd and you really like Bitcoin and you want to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet of your home improvement company and you want to borrow against it, you can't issue perpetual preferreds at 10%. That's just not going to happen. But you can, pledge your Bitcoin to an environment and a lender that you trust and get some leverage. So, on the sort of entity types like yes miners, but also carpenters.
Yeah. So the broader landscape is evolving pretty rapidly as well. We have like Lava, some other newfangled solutions, maybe layer twos, and the ability to have like liquidity pools, things like that. You still have the big prime brokerage houses. I don't know if it's fair to call like NYDIG and Galaxy prime brokers, but I kind of think of them that way. How is the landscape and sort of how's the competitive landscape evolved over the last couple of years? And where do you see sort of archetypes of customers trending? Are they going more Bitcoin native? Are they going more institutional? Now you have BlackRock, Fidelity, like these big names entering the space. From my perspective, I see a segmentation from those potential client customer relationships and archetypes, and ultimately where they want to go and do their business.
So I think that there still is a bit of a crater in the credit provision to the industry in general. When you look at originators like Genesis and BlockFi that had giant books. Genesis I think was peak 15 billion. BlockFi was $1.8 billion in terms of liquidity. Now, like granted, that's not all lending dollars against Bitcoin. That's that is the product at Unchained. I think that's a durable, scalable model that will continue to have demand as the asset grows. But then on the other side of it, you've got folks like Cantor Fitzgerald. So we're sort of maybe upgrading in terms of counterparties, along with the other names in the industry that you mentioned. I think that there's more options. There's ETF options, and sort of that's one way to get exposure, and a familiar way for some to provide leverage. I think Unchained, we provide a model that was very transparent. That maybe you probably have to do some homework to kind of truly appreciate holding a key and the value of transparency. But I think I kind of think of Unchained as like a middle market provider of Bitcoin financial services that aspires to continue to move up the food chain, so to speak.
Yeah, the ETFs are getting pretty interesting in terms of how they source their Bitcoin. Whether they're redeeming or creating new shares, buying Bitcoin, selling Bitcoin. It seems like there is a rapidly growing industry that's going to provide Bitcoin on a lending basis so that they can acquire new coins. Are you seeing that develop? Is Unchained in that mix? How do you see that specific corner of the market sort of evolving?
Lending Bitcoin.
Lending Bitcoin specifically for ETFs, as ETFs are sort of like closing their books, once a day and accessing pools of liquidity.
Yeah, I think like my view generally in terms of yield generation on Bitcoin is not very original. But anytime that if I send you Bitcoin and I get some dollars, or I get sort of an interest stream in terms of interest, there's only one of us that has an asset that we believe could 10x, and that's you. So you really have to be very conservative with your counterparties, I think, when you're lending your coins out. But ETFs are offered by household names like BlackRock and Fidelity. So I think that I'm not sure what the what the rates would be, but I'd certainly be a lot more comfortable sending my coins to Fidelity with their 77-year track record than lending them out to a crypto fund that's going to run a long short strategy or something.
Yeah.
But we,
Both of those are big and uncomfortable. I mean, Fidelity has a lot of exposure to other stuff that doesn't do super well with hyper-Bitcoinization, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the other thing is that Bitcoin is still incredibly small. I mean, I think it's like Bitcoin, $2 trillion, Bitcoin market cap right now is still, some would call it an experiment. We know it's not, but I think for, some of these huge diversified financial companies, it's such a small sliver of what they do.